This is Tahiti, French Polynesia. Ever since the 1700s, when Europeans first sailed into the waters off Tahiti, French Polynesia has been a synonym for an innocently sensual paradise where foreigners were greeted with smiles and offerings of fruit, where the weather was perfect and the scenery beautiful beyond description. French Polynesia is situated in the center of Polynesia in the southern Pacific and comprises 5 distinct island groups. 4 of these, the Marquesas, the Societies, the Australs, and the Gambiers, are volcanic and rugged. The Tuamotus, however, are atolls formed of old coral. Tahiti and the Societies were most likely settled by Polynesians venturing southwest from the Marquesas sometime after 300 AD. These intrepid sailors were by this time a culture of master mariners. Along with the skill to build their incredible double-hulled canoes came the ancient knowledge of how to sail them confidently across the greatest ocean on earth. Those who learned to apply navigating skills acquired great status among their people. And no wonder, for without these skills, the islanders were virtual prisoners. The high volcanic islands of the Society group are old enough to have well-developed barrier reefs, and yet young enough to still have their spires in the clouds. Although the island of Tahiti covers 400 square miles, most people now live along the coast, leaving the interior a relative wilderness. With its protective reef and good harbor, PAPEETE, the capital of French Polynesia, has become one of the busiest ports in the Pacific. Much of the charm of PAPEETE comes from the blending of French and Tahitian ways, although it might be hard to see old Tahiti in the modern westernized city. For the traveler weary of the primitive, PAPEETE offers an oasis of luxury. The opalescent sheen of Tahiti's famous black pearls captures the eye and loosens the purse strings. The black pearls sold in Tahiti come from the Gambier and Tuamotu island groups, where the salinity of the water in the clear coral lagoons favors the black-lipped oyster. The oyster lives out its days hanging below structures like these. The cultured pearl begins as a piece of calcified shell, which is cut into cubes, then reduced by stages to spheres. These spheres form the solid basis on which the opalescent luster will form. Each is carefully implanted into an oyster, so that in several years, with a great deal of luck, the harvest will be ready. The Tahiti Pearl Museum presents the curious with a history of this industry, and of course, they are always willing to help a customer choose a pearl. These loaves of French bread are an immediately recognizable symbol of the French influence. Fresh baked for immediate consumption, they make their way around the town. Up until recent times, all of Tahiti's guests have arrived by sea, and the quay, here along the Boulevard Pomare, is the heart of the city. These modern adventurers follow in a time-honored tradition. Tahiti has been known as a mecca for world cruising voyagers ever since the first explorers arrived. France is only the latest of nations to drop anchor in Tahitian waters. Captain Cook made 3 voyages here in 1769, 1773, and 1777. Not only did Cook give the European world the first complete map of the entire Pacific, but his journals and the records of his ship's historian and artist brought straightforward accounts of the cultures of Tahiti and the Society Islands to the attention of the rest of the world. It was Captain Cook who established Papeete as the cultural and political center of the islands. Before the Europeans, the islanders lived in territories divided by river valleys and mountains. Cook wrongly concluded that the then chief of Papeete was the chief of all Tahiti and gave him tools made of iron, which the islanders had never seen. With these, the chief made war canoes so quickly that by the turn of the century, he became in fact the chief of the whole island, having defeated all his rivals. In the 1820s, Queen Pomare expanded the village to trade with whalers, navy ships, and merchants, and it was a thriving center when France annexed it as a protectorate in 1842. Today, Papeete's waterfront is a busy port by day and a colorful center of nightlife after the sun is set. These self-contained rolling restaurants appear on the dock as soon as the sun goes down. In Papeete, as in most places influenced by the French, gourmet meals are at one's fingertips. While dining out in Papeete can be extravagantly expensive, the rolling restaurants along the waterfront provide a welcome alternative: pizza or pasta, hot Chinese stir-fry, or a Grand Marnier crepe. This is the way to eat. Although Papeete offers a variety of nighttime entertainment, the most popular is probably an evening of traditional music and dance. The large troops at today's dance festivals, or HEIVAs, are perhaps a modern echo of the great groups of earlier days. The activities of the annual HEIVA include various dance competitions and sporting contests, which date back to earlier times. These strong young men compete to hone skills that have served their people for over 4,000 years. Archery was a sport for the Ari'i, or chiefs only. Some speculate that by making the use of the bow and arrow taboo to anyone other than himself, the chief gained a measure of self-protection in a society where he was greatly outnumbered. Spear throwing, however, was a skill needed in daily life. Similarly, boating skills and canoe races were open to every member of society. Today, it is practically impossible to go anywhere in the islands and not see a canoe plying the waters in practice for the next competition. The races themselves can be quite exciting. To experience the HEIVA with its traditional activities is to be transported to a vanished era before the old ceremonial sites, such as these maraes along the coastal road to Papeete, were abandoned. Archaeologists consider the marae, ARAHURAHU, somewhat of a mystery and have only speculated on what might have taken place here. Ceremonies in preparation for long voyages, the birth of royal children, or the victories of war all played their part in the history of these sites. The complex has large open altars built of uniformly perfect stones. One of the altars is known to have served the war god Oro. Bodies of important enemies were often buried at the maraes to consecrate the site. Nearby, Marae Ta'ata consists of 3 long rectangular compounds surrounded by low rock walls. This marae is known for its remarkably uniform stonework. These restored sites represent but a few of the many still hidden in the verdant hills, and even today they are considered taboo and occupied by ancestral ghosts. Tahiti, despite her natural beauty, has few sandy beaches. With the coming of air travel and tourism, the need for beaches developed. Fortunately, the solution was close at hand on the neighboring island of MOOREA. The short ferry trip across the channel is a cultural and sometimes zoological treat. Just 12 miles from Tahiti, MOOREA offers a pleasant change of pace. Though smaller and not as towering as Tahiti, the landscape of MOOREA is more abrupt and more dramatic. This fact, coupled with her superb beaches, has made MOOREA the resort base for Tahiti's visitors. Soon after Tahiti built its international airport, 3 businessmen from California dropped out and started quite a trend here on MOOREA by creating the first over-the-water bungalows for visitors. These unique structures offer not only privacy, but a personal aquarium as well. Like a handful of gems thrown across the water, the Leeward Islands of the Society Group spread over the sea west by northwest from Tahiti. Their names are linked in the imagination with tales of romance and adventure. Raiatea, HUAHINE, and Bora Bora. Enclosed by barrier reefs, all have volcanoes at their centers and are sinking slowly under their own weight, creating deep surrounding lagoons. These blue lagoons, protected from the surf by coral islands growing upon the reef, offer the archetypal image of paradise. Sacred Raiatea, or Hawaii as it was once called, was an important religious center. Polynesian mythology holds that many of the gods were born on the lofty peaks of Raiatea. The greatest chiefs settled here because they believed they were the direct descendants of the gods and that the gods would bestow mana or powers upon them. Chiefs and religious leaders came long distances for ceremonies and feasts in honor of the gods here. To experience the islands as they were in the times of the ancient gods, there is no better way than to see them from the water. Sailing is the preferred way to see the Leeward Islands, and at an islander's pace. Though Raiatea has few beaches, the shallow lagoon surrounding the island is home to some of the most interesting seashells in the Pacific. The Shell Museum, owned and run by a conchologist, Paul Festu, is one of the best in the world and houses a unique collection of shells from around the globe.
We have over 80,000 shells in the world, including the bivalve and the gastropod. And a lot, of course, are living in the South Pacific, where the water is warm. And this is one example. This is the biggest, we can grow the biggest in the world. This one is from Australia. And we can, and to the smallest, up to 1 millimeter in length. We have another interesting one, the Murex pecten. This specimen is from the Vanuatu. Beautiful. Okay. Over here we have a bivalve, the Atrina vexillum. It's the giant mussel, so you don't need too many for your dinner. In natural, they live in sand, buried almost up to here, so you just see the top part, sticking out. And those bivalves, like most of them, just filter the water. This particular species, you can find it all across the Pacific.
To the northeast of Raiatea lies the leeward island of HUAHINE. The bay at Whare, Huahine's principal town, reflects the tranquil pace of life here. Huahine is actually two islands connected by a bridge. They share the same barrier reef, leading scientists to believe that they are actually two high points of one ancient volcano. These islanders were the last to hold onto their independence before France annexed them in 1895. The town of Whare couldn't be a more typical sleepy South Seas village. The 4,000 islanders grow and market copra, watermelon, and cantaloupe. And of course, some of them are fishermen. This is a quiet place where the tourists are few and the scenic sights abundant, which is just what inspired HEIVA, a sprawling resort that looks more like a native village than a conventional hotel complex. Hotels and facilities such as this one offer an alternative way to preserve some of the natural and cultural wealth of the South Seas. Legend says that when Ta'aroa, the supreme deity and oldest among the Tahitian gods, created the Leeward Islands, he created Bora Bora first. Long praised as the most beautiful place on earth, this 7-million-year-old island does indeed live up to its reputation. Bora Bora's two highest peaks extract moisture from the perpetual halo of clouds clinging to their spires, which in turn nurtures the luxuriant vegetation below. Bora Bora is not large. The road around the island is a scant 17 miles long, but it leads to quaint villages and beautiful reef-fringed bays. Bora Bora's first settlers were outcasts from other islands. Their progeny provided Bora Bora with the reputation of an illustrious warrior state. The fact that there was but one entrance through its reef provided protection for these early inhabitants from large European ships. And today, it's that same protection that makes the lovely blue lagoon inside the reef such a fabulous playground. Diving in the relatively shallow water is superb. The main pass through the barrier reef funnels the food necessary to maintain an active underwater population. An abundance of small fish feed the ever-present array of moray eels, pelagic fishes such as these rainbow runners, and an occasional shark. Just inside the pass, near the Bora Bora Yacht Club, is the Marototini Marae, one of the most important maraes on the island. These upright stones, or ahus, are thought to be resting spots for the gods, revered ancestors, and ceremonial participants of great rank. Dr. Yoshi Sonoto of the Bishop Museum in Hawaii restored this marae in 1968. Today, we can only guess at what kinds of ceremonies and activities went on here in times long past. The outlying islands of French Polynesia depend on Tahiti for their supplies. PAPEETE is the home port to the ARANUI, the cargo ship that once a month travels to that group of islands furthest away from any continent on Earth, the Marquesas. The ARANUI is the lifeline that links these distant islands with the rest of the world. Their primitive beauty has attracted writers, artists, and adventurers since the time of Captain Cook, and today the ship offers the kind of classic South Seas adventure of which 19th century seafaring novels were made. The Marquesas Islands may be remote, but the people here still want and need the same things that make life in the rest of the modern world a lot easier. Supplies of medicine, food, generators, and even this new four-wheel drive pickup are loaded in PAPEETE and then unloaded at their place of destination on one of the 8 islands that the ship visits. Because of the steep ridges separating the inhabited valleys in the Marquesas, each community is completely self-contained. Every village must have its own power plant, which, like the few cars here, depends on the fuel brought to shore barrel by barrel in the whaleboats. In turn, the ARANUI buys and transports the copra that is the main export of these islands. The tattooed Polynesian sailors that make up the ARANUI's crew are responsible for loading and unloading the 2,000 tons of cargo on board, as well as the copra that fills her holds for the return trip to Tahiti. Many of the 100 passengers on each trip are islanders returning home from Tahiti by deck passage. There are also 30 cabins that offer comfortable living space during the 16-day trip. The ARANUI plays host to a small group of travelers who wish to experience these islands to their fullest. A great spirit of camaraderie develops between everyone on this voyage and introduces a few very lucky people to some of the most fascinating scenery and people in the world. The ARANUI's rounds take in all 6 of the inhabited Marquesan Isles and include stops at Takapoto and Rangiroa in the Tuamotus. All but one of the 76 islands of the Tuamotu archipelago are low atolls and don't show well on radar. Because of the hazard they present to navigation, they've been called the dangerous archipelago. These unusual islands are very ancient volcanoes that have created barrier reefs and then slowly sunk to form huge lagoons in place of their extinct volcanoes. The Marquesas receive few visitors. Large airplanes can't land here, and there are no hotels. Though the early inhabitants were a warrior culture practicing cannibalism, Captain Cook found these islands hospitable when he visited during his second voyage in 1774. In 1842, when the French annexed the Marquesas, the population was estimated to have been 60,000. By 1926, the ravages of European diseases, tribal warfare, and a collapsing culture had reduced the population to less than 2,500 people. Although the population has again grown to about 7,000, there is an eerie sense on these islands that a vanished people still haunt their former homes. These geologically young islands have no reef and no surrounding flatlands. Each island is sharply divided by steep ridges, formidable barriers to travel and communication. Nuku HEIVA, the largest island in the group, has a population of 2,400. Its principal port, Taiwai, is the economic and administrative center for the entire group. The chief crop for export here is copra, the mature fruit of the coconut palm, which is used for making soap, cooking oil, and cosmetic products. Harvesting copra is still the simple act it's always been, with the sun doing much of the work. The nuts are split open and allowed to dry. After a few days' exposure, the meat is easy to remove from the shells. After that, it's dried further on protected racks. Once bagged, it's ready to be sold and loaded onto the whaleboats. Although many traditions of their forefathers have been swept away by fate and time, the island's tradition of carving has not been lost. At the Catholic Cathedral in Taiwai, many skillfully wrought carvings testify to a strong artistic sensibility. Today's artists have the same eye for detail that their forefathers had, and the fact remains that Marquesans are considered the best carvers in all of the Pacific. Although occasionally they transport their crafts to Tahiti, the eventual owner of this bowl is likely to be a traveler from the ARANUI. Wood isn't the only medium the carvers work. These contemporary artisans have found that volcanic rock also meets the demands of their craft. In a culture that has no word for art, carving is made to serve a functional purpose. Christianity and Western culture are recent arrivals in the islands, and the veneer of Westernization is in some cases only skin deep. Ancient dress and body decoration, which can be studied in artwork and photos, was banned for many years. Originally used as a sign of rank in society, the meaning of ancient tattoo symbols has been lost. But as the search for cultural identity becomes more important, the tattoo is making a comeback. Tapa cloth is still made in the Marquesas, although it is not as widely used as in Tonga and Samoa. Printed pieces can be purchased, but the traditional cloth was worn in its pure, natural state. Unlike the Tongan mulberry tapa, here the cloth was made from the inner bark of the breadfruit tree. Breadfruit has many uses, and in the days when the island sustained a much larger population, the highlands were thickly planted with it. As rare as they are difficult to build, the few miles of road demonstrate the difficulty of cross-island travel here. In some places, a truck or car is useless, and the horse becomes a part of everyday life. This bit of countryside above TAIPIVAI has an interesting claim to literary fame. Here in 1842, young Herman Melville heeded the siren's call and jumped ship to find refuge in the TAIPIVAI Valley. He lived here for a time and wrote the novel Taipi about that experience. Not as popular as his later book Moby Dick, Taipi offers a view of life here when cannibalism was still practiced and the native culture still flourished. In the hills above TAIPIVAI, this deserted marae patiently awaits the return of her people. This pit was a food locker for emergency or battle rations. A paste of fermented breadfruit and banana poi was stored here and would keep for a long period of time. The anchorage at Hakau'i, also on Nuku HEIVA, provides a welcome opportunity to explore the backcountry wilderness. Once, many hundreds of people lived along the stream. Special walking trails existed for the women of these villages, as it was taboo for them to tread on the man's path. A 2-hour hike brings the Vaipo waterfall into closer range. Said to be the 3rd tallest waterfall in the world, it tumbles nearly 350 meters before being swallowed in its own mist. The haunting echoes of music and laughter, of village sounds, of work and play, linger in places like these. In the cemetery at Atuona, on the island of Hivaoa, a modest monument marks the final chapter in the life of Paul Gauguin. Gauguin lived and worked for years in Tahiti before moving on to the Marquesas in 1901. He made his mark on the world of art and on Polynesia. Avant-garde in so many ways, he gave up a career as a stockbroker in Paris to come to the islands in search of his dream of the noble savage and a society living close to nature. His luminous paintings in the brilliant colors of the land he found brought his unique vision of the people here to the rest of the world. The serenity of his canvases didn't reveal the inner torments of the artist. He died just a year after his arrival. Jacques Brel, the famous Belgian cabaret singer, is also buried here. The museum at Vaipai on Uahuka contains the best collection of artifacts of the ancient Marquesans. Many of these pieces help tie together the story of island colonization. Dr. Sonoto has proven the lineage of the Polynesian expansion throughout the Pacific by following the development of the fishhook from society to society. The earliest tools and fishing gear found in Hawaii link it directly to the Marquesans' tools during their time of expansion to other island groups. Some of these artifacts were donated by islanders, while others were excavated from archaeological sites. But for every relic in the museum, there are 10 more left in the jungle. On Uapo, the community is working to recover portions of their devastated culture, and with it, gaining an enabling sense of identity. Here, Toti, the head of this dance company, inspires the youth of his village. Some of the oldest music and dance lore are being recalled, studied, and performed. Dances bequest the favor of the gods for fine weather and the successful outcome of the pig hunt. Others depict the asking for power and strength in the male initiation dance. And the bird dance or seduction dance allows young people to express the flowering of their emotions. This dance, the Motu Haka, or Island Unity Dance, is sung and danced by all the troops in the Marquesas and speaks to the questions of whether the young people will remember the old traditions and whether or not modern civilization is good for their people. At home in their remote and strikingly beautiful islands, the Marquesans are a dignified and gracious people, proud of their own ways, but interested in the ways of the outside world. They represent a more traditional style of living than the unique European and Polynesian blend found on the islands of Bora Bora and Tahiti. French Polynesia is a tropical paradise where dreams and reality merge and flow as one. In these fabled islands, this essence lives on in the soft lushness of the rainforest, the aquamarine of the sea, the faces of the people, and the pulse of ancient rhythms.
International Video Network brings you the greatest adventures in video entertainment. Award-winning documentaries from Reader's Digest, exploring the masterworks of man and nature. Travel planning videos from Fodors, revealing looks at the people, places, and cultures of the world. Rand McNally Video Expeditions, taking you to some of the most remote and dangerous places on Earth. Rand McNally Video Travelers, whirlwind tours you can enjoy from the comfort of your living room. Super Cities, celebrating the best-loved cities of the world. And Video Visits, whisking you away to exotic, romantic, and popular destinations. International Video Network, great adventures in video. See your local video retailer or call International Video Network at 1-800-669-4486, extension 850 for your free catalog, featuring more than 250 travel, documentary, and special interest videos.